Hello. Sorry about that slight technical delay there. Yes, that's not a picture from Masters of the Air on my avatar. That is a bridge too far, in case you were wondering. But hey, it's World War II, so it works for me. Right. I've got a great panel lined up tonight. We're going to be talking about Masters of the Air episode 6. Don't forget to leave a comment in the chat. If you've got any questions for any of my guests, please do the same thing. We're going to get into various things about the episode. But before we do that, let me bring in my guests. Straight from closing time at the pub up north, it's the Northern English Bastard, who's joining us for the first time on the Masters of the Air stream, but a regular on my channel on the Nielsen ratings on Tuesday night. How are you, sir?
I am fine. Just had a nice few drinks and a nice little evening with the day with the missus, and thanks for having me on as well. Very grateful.
No problem. And if you do have a subtitles app, put it on now for Northern English Bastard for when he speaks, in case you can't understand. That mainly applies to Americans, of course, who get very confused from different accents.
I will try to class it up a little bit so you can understand.
Did you see all the reactions to Reaper's accent the other night on Open Bar? You know, the Americans go, "What's this accent?"
I know. I watched some of it. I need to properly rewatch it again all the way through, because I think I had to get up early as well. So
I was thinking,
yeah, I'll give it a rewatch, give it a like and comment as well. Just
haven't they heard of John Lennon? You know, next, but by no means the second runner-up. It's the man with interesting apparel that you all shouldn't be wearing. BluCollarLoser, and representing the B-17 cruise.
And Wild Turkeys from Kentucky.
Is that the same bottle as last week?
I can't keep track of this stuff.
Oh man, come on.
There's so many here.
Don't be drinking too much alcohol on my streams, please. I worry about you, man.
Yeah, glad you do.
Yeah, well, you know, I care about my friends. What can I tell you? Next, we have the man who worked on the show in various aspects and flew a toy model B-17 across the Atlantic in his dreams. It's the Inside Man.
Hello.
A Retropolis Now. How are you, sir?
Oh, very well, thank you. Very well, very well. Had a birthday this week, or rather last week. Friday.
21 again.
2022. Yeah, you know, getting on a bit. But yeah, very good. You're all looking very well, all of you.
I've been told to let the man cook and drink. Yeah, indeed. As long as he does both, that's always good. You made him watch Space Invaders, apparently.
This morning, yes.
I quite like that film.
I did.
You remember I enjoyed that movie when I rented it.
I did too when I was 10 years old, but some films don't age well. But for a kid's film, it's fantastic for a kid's film. But
let me bring in my last guest. It's straight from Dr. Evil's lair in his hidden volcano. It is HistoryBro. How are you, sir?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? Thanks for having me on, as always.
It's an absolute pleasure, and really do enjoy your unique historical perspective on this show. Now, for everybody watching, we're gonna break the show down a little bit differently tonight, because it had three distinctive narratives, three distinctive storylines with the episode. One of the storylines concerns Lieutenant Harry Crosby, played by actor Anthony Boyle, who I've said many times before, and I'll say it again, I think is one of the best actors in the show. He conveys so much with his looks in scenes, over his dialogue even, I would say. So we have a story about him being told to go to probably a fairly non-essential conference in Oxford as a way of giving him some time off due to the mass recent casualties that the 100th has suffered. All these men have lost loads of their friends and so on. So they're all really suffering from PTSD, although we didn't call it back in the 40s. It would have been known as shell shock effectively then. Then we have a second storyline with Major Robert Rosie Rosenthal, who is the captain of the fort that came back, the 1B-17 that survived the raid in the last episode, and his crew being ordered, not suggested, being ordered to attend the Flak House, which is basically a large country house with a full range of leisure activities that the men can enjoy while they rest there for a week, to take them off the front line effectively. So enforced leave effectively. And a number of interesting things happen in that storyline, and we'll discuss that storyline separately. I don't want to jump topics because I think these should all be explored individually. Again, the actor Nate Mann, who plays Major Robert Rosie Rosenthal, and he looks a lot like a lot of the other characters in the show, does a really good job to sort of make himself stand out. Finally, we have Major Bucky Egan's storyline in episode 6, who starts the episode on the run. Pretty soon he becomes a POW, technically before the credits roll, and then ultimately ends up in Stalag Luft III, which is the same prisoner of war camp where the legendary Great Escape took place, as depicted, somewhat heavily fictionalized version in the film The Great Escape, but still a fantastic film if you've never seen it. In fact, I'm sure me and HistoryBro should definitely do a Christmas special on The Great Escape at some point. It'd have to be a Christmas or a bank holiday. I think that's the only time we're able to watch.
Yeah.
So those are the storylines. We will be getting into spoilers. I'll try and pre-warn you before we drop any biggies, but obviously if you haven't seen episode 6 yet, do expect some spoilers to occur. This episode, I'm just going to start with saying this episode was a mixed bag for me. Fortunately, it passed the roof and chimney test. No complaints there. But there were some things that I wasn't too sure about. There were a couple of lines of dialogue I thought, and there was one moment in the film in particular where I thought that this would have never happened in this time period. And I'll say what that is when I think you can probably guess where I'm going with that when we get to it. But before we dive in, just want to say hi to the 26 people watching. Thank you so much for tuning into this.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
It's a nice number. Do like and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got Blibbity Blop, who was here last week, who's come back. CLS Studio, who's a big fan of the channel, always supporting me, watching my gaming streams, which are very niche, and I appreciate you, sir. Then Blibbity Blop may in fact come on the last episode if we have space, because he's a bit of a aviation expert, and I've been chatting with him offline. Either way, he's quite happy to come and do a separate chat if there isn't room, because we're going to try and get a big panel on for the sort of end of the show to see what everybody thinks of it overall. Snazzy comment, not the newspaper from Surrey. Really enjoyed this episode, which was surprising because no planes. I've said it before. I don't mind if there's no action. Keith E, thank you so much. Loving the Arnhem Bridge pic. There's no such thing as a bad picture of Arnhem Bridge unless it's on fire. So and Stupenzo, of course, in the chat. Most of his comments are naughty. I'm just trying to find one that's I've already put the Space Invaders one up. So thanks very much for being here. Darth Plato, who's a big history buff, been on my channel before as well. Great to see him back. And we have Gaza London, who was here last week. Shield of Dragons as well. Right, so I've given everybody a shout out who's commented. All right, so we're going to cover Lieutenant Harry Crosby first, okay? And I'm going to come to each of my guests, but I'm going to go first on this one. I won't go first on all three of these storylines, but I'll go first on this one. So basically, he's assigned a room at Oxford to attend a conference. We never see the conference, so plot-wise, it's a bit arbitrary. I believe this is a true event. He did actually go. I haven't been able to find out if he did, in fact, end up sharing his quarters with a woman. I'll just put some definition on that. They have separate bedrooms, but in a shared sort of accommodation, what would be a kind of master's boy room at Oxford University, where 2 students or 3 students would share kind of living quarters with a separate bedrooms and a shared lounge, bathroom, etc. He's told he's going to be sharing the room with someone after an introduction to the space with a particularly posh English subaltern. And then later in the episode, this lady arrives, played by Belle Powley, who's a great actress, also a really lovely person in real life. And they have really good chemistry together, and their scenes are interesting.
Definitely.
I don't know to what degree their scenes are true, but there's one scene where they're all in a room. I guess it's supposed to be after the conference or something, because the conference is never really, the content of it's never really discussed. There's a load of British officers there, and straight away we're into bash the British territory. Tick. Officer is a complete snob, very arrogant, very rude, makes lots of derogatory comments about the Americans. And then her character, then they're talking about how women are treated. And, you know, the British officer is moaning about Americans chasing after people like, you know, Lady Grenfell or Lady Snossington or whoever. Surely they should confine themselves to barmaids and waitresses like we do. You know, saying that basically the upper classes prey upon the lower class working girls for physical gratification is kind of the implication. At this point, Belle Powley's character steps in and has a go at this guy and sort of throws his comments back in his face. And for me, that moment in that scene felt very, very, very unlikely. This is the 1940s. If that had really happened, I think it would have been something a bit more like this. Because
I mean,
this is the 1940s we're talking about.
Someone had to say.
And in a room full of men in a military, even a post-briefing, relaxed atmosphere. I'm sorry, I had to put that in.
Yeah.
Thanks for using it. Thanks for using it. That's so good.
Shout out to Harry Enfield. But the reason that Harry Enfield made that joke in the first place is because he was taking the piss out of this period about how women were treated, and that if a woman had begged to sort of express an opinion that differed with her husband over the dinner table, she was probably in for a bit of a walloping that night, you know.
Yeah, Lance, you know, she's very lucky Sean Connery wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, spousal abuse was commonplace. Let's not go down that road, blue collar. But no
problem. I'm
just, you know, it is a period piece, and I think if you're striving for accuracy with your aeroplanes and your weapons and your uniforms and the depiction of prisoner of war camps and bombed out German cities and things, and we'll get into that later, you should be also striving for accuracy in the depiction of the society at the time. Now, she might have made a comment under her breath, and that bloke would have said, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that." "Oh, nothing." You know, it would have been more like that, if at all, or she would have made a comment to him after they'd left the room. But for her to say what she said, unless she's some kind of super secret agent that outranks all the men in the room, which I think is unlikely because that would have been a secret, it just felt very unbelievable to me. No disrespect to the actors in the scene. They all did a fine job with what they were given. But I did find it verged on comedy. The rest of this storyline and the rest of the scenes with these characters were fine. I mean, I can't believe that they actually did give Belle Powley a line of dialogue to read, and let me get this right because I wrote it down, that says, "It took me years to master the pole." I mean, I know she was talking about punting, but then we find out later she doesn't even actually know how to punt. So I just, you know, there was one other thing in this narrative that, again, I was thinking, how many women sort of carried guitars into bars in the 1940s and spontaneously decide to sing a song? Now, we're in Oxford, so it's a student town, but we establish in the episode that there are no female students because they're not allowed to go to university to have degrees. She actually says that.
Yeah.
So I get that it still might have a bit of a bohemian artsy fartsy thing, but again, and the song felt a bit not modern. Well, I was going to say not modern, but one step too far towards modern, and then it goes into kind of a montage. The montage itself is effective, but that song as well. So the two issues I have in the Crosby storyline are, one, that sudden outburst by Bel Powley's character putting the men in their place, and two, the guitar song in the pub. History Bro, let's hear from you first, sir, and I'm gonna pop you up the top here so we can see you. There we go.
Yeah. I would say the writing, both the actual plot and the dialogue in this Masters of the Air has been, in my opinion, very, very, very good. Only a couple of things so far in 6 episodes has sort of jarred with me, but I absolutely agree with you. That scene was nonsense. It's absurd, really. As you said, bordering on comedy. Yeah, I'd go with that. It's obviously crowbarred in. It's an anachronism. There's one anecdote I've told a couple of times at various places on the internet, but I think it's a really interesting example. There's an interesting interview with Jackie Kennedy, later Jackie Onassis, in the very, very early 60s, just as John had become president. She's been interviewed by Walter Cronkite on CBS or something or other. And they say, what do you think about the Cold War? What do you think about politics? What do you think about civil rights? And she says, she goes, oh, no. It's not my place to have any opinion. No, I leave all that to John. No, don't ask me. It's really not my place. And, she basically says, I'm a silly woman. I shouldn't be, you shouldn't even really ask me. Right?
Do you not think that do you not think that would probably be more sort of skewing towards the fact that it's up to her husband, it's not up to her, that she has no influence over her husband?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well,
that's how I would personally read that.
Yeah. But the point is, it's just an indication. I just use it as an indication that even by the early 60s, it was still very, very, very common for women to sort of to know their limits. Right? It's really during the sexual revolution that it became, not the case. During the 40s, during the war, I find it absurd that that she would sort of tick off an officer like that. It just wouldn't, as Lance said, it just didn't ring true. It just really didn't ring true. However, I sort of, having criticised it reasonably heavily there, I just sort of let it pass. I'm just used to that sort of inaccuracy these days. And just sort of get over it. It wasn't too much of a big deal for me. Because as I say, in general, everything else in this show, the writing, the dialogue has been very, very good, I think, overall.
I mean, I know why they put it in, because, she's a strong female, independent character. And there were women that served as in SOE, which I think is kind of the implication, that she's somehow connected to intelligence, but she's also supposed to be at the conference, I guess representing her branch or whatever, because she suddenly has to take meetings and she suddenly has to rush off and stuff like that. I don't know if this character is completely made up. I think that there was apparently the real Harry Crosby didn't mention this incident with the woman until after his wife died. I read that somewhere. I don't know if it's true. We may go on to Google and see that he died before his wife. I don't know. I haven't been able to establish, was this woman a real character. I'm fine with it if she's not. I'm fine with it being a bit of dramatic license. It's
one other thing I'd say before you move on to others and their opinions. I would say that montage I found quite good. Again, the song was maybe a touch out of place. The very concept of some random woman having a guitar and just singing, maybe a touch wrong, but nonetheless, I thought the song and the montage, for me, for whatever reason, it worked.
It was effective.
That magic, whatever it is, of writing and directing to elicit an emotional response. For me, it worked, and it's not easily done. So again, credit to them there. All credit.
There's some debate going on in the chat about, because I can't remember the exact line that Bel Powley's character says, but she says something like, "Oh no, Oxford doesn't give degrees to women, or
find
no,
it.
or no women at university
yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Something.
I studied, but women aren't allowed to get degrees.
I
It's
think was
funny,
that line. Yeah, and
I thought, I of course could be wrong, but I thought women were allowed to get degrees before the war. I thought it was
Yeah, they
sort
were.
of in
Yes, they
the
were.
20s. I think it
Yes,
was
they were.
the late
Lorimer
20s.
says she's
so-
referring to Cambridge, which I think she does make reference to Cambridge,
Yeah,
doesn't
they
she?
did, they
So
did,
maybe
yeah.
she's talking about Cambridge, and Darth Plato was saying that was true at that time, that Cambridge wouldn't give degrees to women. Okay, so
Okay.
fair enough. So
Yeah,
I
apparently she
wasn't.
was real as well. She was real as well, but the name was changed. Lorem Ipsum, I think it is. Is it, if
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing your name right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard that he wrote about her in his book. So that must be true. I haven't read his book. I'm just judging the show on what I see on the screen. I felt like she probably was a real character because it was a
Yeah.
really big liberty.
She is saying that she was from Cambridge. That's where she learned to punt.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that's right. She's
Plus,
got
there
dialect.
was strong women in World War II as well. I mean, look at Zaba,
Yeah.
who
Sure,
had a carving name of proud. She was a real spy, and
Yeah.
she was a real badass as well.
Violet Szabo, wasn't it? Violet Szabo.
That's it, yeah.
Good film
Yeah.
that Carver Name of
Yes,
Pride.
fantastic film. Virginia McKenna.
Yeah, Virginia McKenna.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Was in
Yeah,
Born
Yeah,
Free.
beautiful woman.
Yeah, Lance, her exact dialogue was like, they don't give actual degrees out. So.
Right. Blue Collar, let's go to you next. Just sticking with the Harry Crosby storyline, the Oxford storyline. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? How was it for you?
The one thing I did like when he was talking to the one officer, and then like I'm sure everybody here and in the chat, you've seen The Patriot with Mel Gibson, and just when he's talking to about, listen, you're men and stuff. If you keep them in line, maybe they'll be like more like hindered and stuff because they're kind of being like they're just being wild and doing whatever they want. And he's like, well, respectfully speaking, sir, these guys may not live tomorrow or next week, so like I'm probably not going to tell them. But I always found it interesting where the whole British, British versus American, the whole like gentleman conduct, which is why when watching A Patriot, I never understood the whole like, remember warfare? It was a gentleman's warfare to have like 10, 20 rows of men walk up very slowly, hold the musket, aim it down, and shoot. And I'm thinking to myself that imagine being the guys that are in the front two rows, like you're automatically getting killed. And Mel Gibson's character, they weren't used to the whole guerrilla warfare. But he's telling him is like, this war, the way we're treating people, this is so like inhuman. It's so like unbehaving. And it's just funny how like, different factions talked about, the whole gentleman conduct of fighting. In all reality, Hitler, Nazis, this whole warfare, this wasn't about gentlemen. This wasn't civilized. This was barbaric. And that's the vibe I got. It's like, dude, this is serious. This is not gentlemen. Hitler, the Nazis, these guys are not here to mess around. And I did like that banter back and forth. We're like, yeah, you know what? Our guys, they may not live tomorrow. So you know what? They're going to go out, drink, sleep with women. They're going to smoke whatever because tomorrow may never come.
Hang fire there for a second because coming in like a Supermarine Spitfire, the critical drinker has arrived.
Yeah.
Evening, man.
What's up, guys?
Hello, mate.
Good to see you, sir.
Yeah, good.
Hey,
So just so you know, drinker, we're talking about the episode, and there are 3 distinct narratives in the episode, and we're taking them one at a time.
I see you're on the bullshit one right now.
Well, I did raise the point that when the lady spoke out in the middle of the room, that the more realistic response was
that was a classic Harry Enfield one right there.
Never get bored of it. Never get bored.
It was, and I made the point that the reason that he made that sketch was because he was taking the piss out of the attitudes that pervaded at that time.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. And there was so many aspects of this storyline that's just smacked of 2024 writing, and it's such a shame.
Well, we'll come on to you in a second. Let me I'm taking each guest in turn. Let me just let Chris finish. So, Chris, other things about the Harry Crosby storyline?
I do look right here. I'm double checking. 31 minutes in, she goes, "Okay, well, in Scotland, we don't dilute our whiskey." And I'm like, "Who am I to argue with a beautiful woman about not diluting her whiskey?" So,
well, we've got a Scottish expert on whiskey on the panel, so we'll defer to him in a second.
That's what I was thinking about watching this episode.
Speaking of whiskey.
Oh my God! Okay, I got 2 people drinking now. So,
there's a lot more to get into, Lance.
I need to change the title of this to "Chew the Fat Bar," Masters of the Air. So, Chris, anything else to to add?
Oh,
about
there's
that?
definitely more, but yeah, like Drinker said, I'm thinking like, boy, they got to stop. Like, if you want to keep everything authentic, you can't keep adding this modern dialogue or modern audiences into the 40s. Come on, guys, like, you know.
It's interesting that you mentioned Mel Gibson, because I did think that scene could have been directed by him when we had the mean British officer and, you know, the stuff about the Americans. Inside Man, let's hear your opinion on that narrative, mate. I'm going to have to limit you to 5 minutes. But...
Right. Okay.
All right. Hold my beer.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Here goes. This was obviously wedged into this episode. This is obviously the biggest reshoot of the entire series. This is obviously something that didn't exist in the original episode, and something that they obviously felt that they had to put in. I thought the whole thing was I thought it was garbage. I hated the dialogue. I thought the dialogue was anachronistic. There were moments in there that really made me feel quite nauseous. I thought it was chocolate box nausea. I mean, I'm sure this young lady is a fine actress and everything, but I thought she stank. I thought she was terrible. I didn't like anything about this part of the show. I thought it was purely done for box ticking. And I think what we've discovered here is that we now know that Apple have fallen foul of the same kind of insidious kind of nonsense that we're seeing everywhere. This is definitely part of that. 100%. I would absolutely guarantee that this is a reshoot. It's you know, as they say, reshoots, rarely make things better, but they certainly do make things worse. And I think that this is really made this episode worse. I hated it. I really hated everything about that whole third of the show, that whole narrative. And I really did think that she stank.
It's interesting that you mentioned this in reshoots, because when lists of locations were produced on social media, Oxford, in most of the early lists and the early articles, was not one of them. So that would suggest to me that you're correct. That the Oxford storyline probably was done in the pickups and the reshoots that was after like the 2021.
Yeah, I think you really have to look at the dates and you know why this was languishing around for 2 years. You know, why was it languishing for 2 years? You know, there was evidently an awful lot that was wrong with this, and you know, decisions that were made by executives. I think now looking at it in retrospect and revisiting some of the other episodes, and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking those voiceovers, they absolutely stink of executives' notes that have been given to production. They reek of it. I just think there's far too much. You know, we're going to tell you rather than show you. And
we'll come on to that in the Flak House narrative
I genuinely thought that she was terrible. I thought she absolutely stank, and her delivery was abysmal. And it was this kind of, I have to talk really loud to make myself sound posh. It was that kind of thing. The obvious kind of conflict between the RA, the British officers and the Americans. We've seen that. We saw that in episode 2, did we not? You know, why do they have to repeat themselves? Why did they have to repeat that? We already know that.
Okay. Well, look,
I don't know.
Just for the record, we don't always all agree on here. I liked Bel Pally's performance in it. I mean, if somebody's directed her to say, "Look, right, we want you to play a really upper class and posh," I assume that's the direction she was given. You know, she did that. So I didn't mind her. I didn't mind her at all. But look, you're entitled to your opinion, and that's all good, man. Okay. So anything else about this storyline? What about the guitar and that?
Oh my god! Oh my god!
I thought we were in the 1960s when I saw that, man.
Yeah. As soon as I saw that, I thought, hang on a minute. where's Joni Mitchell? Where's Joan Baez? You know, it was one of those moments. I completely disagree on the montage. I think that would have been perfectly fine if that was a piece of scored music rather
Yeah,
than
I
this.
did think
Yeah.
that. I did think
You know, rather than this kind of hippie trippy, you know, hey, let's all fight together. Aren't the Nazis bad? Song, which really was so contrived.
There was
It
a
was
lot of
just
like
so
praising
contrived.
of the Soviets and the Chinese as well, which
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
that was in the song title. That was in the song lyric.
yeah. Remember, everyone, communism is actually good. Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Boy.
Can I say? Can
You
I
know, and
make
all this
one
about
point?
we'll tear the fascists down. Yeah.
Hang on,
If
Bo.
it kills more people than Nazism, then yeah, communism is great.
Luke, jump in because you haven't commented yet.
Yeah, it is a little bit cringe. You can tell it's. I'm with Inside Man on this. It is proper box ticking because from the limited knowledge I learned about women in World War II, they seemed more preoccupied with supporting the soldiers that were actually risking their lives, other than women are so badly downtrodden in the 40s. It's. I don't think it was anything that was that common back in those days. And you can still have her be a strong woman that's very realistic to how women behaved back then. I mean, just go back to old films like Carve a Name with Pride, which I mentioned earlier. I mean, that's a very good example of a very strong female who's realistically portrayed in World War II.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Bo, go on. You had a comment, mate.
There was one line in it which irked me from a historical point of view, and it is a bit contentious because there's sort of
Is it in that narrative? Is it in the Harry Crosby narrative?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
When she's having a drink with him and he mentions bubbles, and she says, don't feel guilty. It's all of this is Hitler's fault. One thing to say is that there's sort of the usual narrative of World War II, sort of the cult historian's narrative of, or the boomer truth narrative of World War II. And then there's sort of more revisionist versions of the overall narrative of World War II. Now, one thing which sort of the boomer truth version of World War II says, and you can even find it in Laurence Olivier's World at War documentary, which is seminal and superb, but you'll find it all over the place in Indiana Jones and things, is that Hitler wanted to conquer the world. That's not true. He didn't. It's not at all what his overall vision was, to conquer the world. And anyway, I don't want to be an apologist for Nazism or Hitlerism or anything, but nonetheless, that's just not true. And when they put it in there, it's just a little bit
an oversimplification. It's an oversimplification, isn't it? And it's almost kind of, let's just explain Nazism and fascism to the lowest common denominator, something that you kids will understand. It's that kind of that's how it felt to me.
The narrative.
There wasn't a lot of that in Band of Brothers. There wasn't a lot of that in Pacific either. Actually,
it was one of those things that's self-evident as well. It's like, okay, we get it. Like the Germans are bad. They've invaded Europe. They need to be beaten. Like that's it. We get it. Like we don't need a further examination of the ideological underpinnings of that.
Well, Drinker, it's your turn. Sticking with the Harry Crosby narrative.
Right, I'm going to hard in this one.
Actor Anthony Boyle. So this is the storyline in Oxford going to the conference.
Okay.
I already said my issues with it. What do you think?
Right off the bat, I knew that this storyline was, first of all, pointless because the episode would have worked perfectly well by juxtaposing other dude who's in the country house on resting, R&R, basically, with the brutal conditions in occupied Europe when he's taken prisoner and he's seen people get executed. Like that juxtaposition of like the beautiful, idyllic English countryside with the horror of occupied Europe, which has this lovely gray filter on it. Did you notice that? Everything's gray as fuck. Like it's just washed out. Okay, fine, I get it. They do these things to make a visual impression, but whatever. But yeah, so straight away, this third strand just felt superfluous because it's the same deal. It's just an airman in a relatively comfortable, nice location, just doing nice things. And not really getting, the pressures of the war are taken away from him temporarily. So it felt pointless right off the bat. Then it crossed quickly over into annoying territory because the first time that you get to see him, He's posing in front of that mirror, like acting like a complete douche. Rehearsing his lines for someone who's not there. Shirtless,
Clark Gable
obviously.
or something. He's
And and then she shows up, and she's, there's the typical, like, she's completely non-flustered by it, but he's like really embarrassed and like, oh God, don't see me shirtless. Like he's super embarrassed about the whole thing. And then there's like, I felt like I was watching Marvel's version of World War II. It was like a Marvel movie, and
That's
the
fair.
dialogue, she's like very confident, very witty, like kind of just subtly making fun of him. And I thought, oh fuck, here we go. In a show that's largely avoided this stuff up until now, we have to endure this. The idea that she's been billeted with him, a man and a woman billeted together in the same residence, that shit wouldn't even happen now in 2024. It certainly wouldn't have happened in the 1940s. That would not have been allowed.
I was trying to find out if that was true, and he did attend the conference, as Lauren.
I can buy into that.
He did attend the conference. He was there for a couple of weeks.
Probably didn't need to see it though, narratively.
I don't know how crucial the conference was. It might have been quite nice to have seen a conference scene, maybe if it was about something that was vital to the aviation sort of storyline.
It's exactly as you say, that you don't see anything of the importance of the conference. So, and as Stricker says, which renders it completely superfluous. It renders
there's this very stereotypical stuffy looking professor banging on about the Magna Carta, and it's like, we invented this 500 years before you Yanks churned it out. And then we were under colonial rule. That
scene's in the next storyline. So let's hold comments on that for the minute. I've got something to say about that.
Okay.
The
conversations with the British officers, like they couldn't be portrayed as more stereotypically like haughty and aristocratic and British. Like, when are you Yanks going to learn to control yourselves? Like drinking in pubs, fighting, having fun. What is this all about?
Fishing in the streets.
Yeah, there never seems to be any care.
What the fuck do you think British people did at the same time? Like, that's not a uniquely American thing in the slightest. So, they tried to portray him as so ridiculously out of line. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Well, and then after all this, the culmination of this whole thing is like she just like gets the equivalent of a text message and then fucks off.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Guess there was no point to you then. Like, I thought there was going to be some revelation that she works for GCHQ, or, or one of her brothers has been killed or something, or she's actually like a spy, something like that. Something really interesting.
I thought she was about to get the letter that her husband had been killed. I thought that she was going to, or a brother or something like that. The implication is that she's so superior and so secret, we can't tell you who she's working for or what she's doing, but she's important. She's got to leave.
Yeah, this is not the kind of show where you can throw something like that in and have people like just accept it. It's so like weird, weirdly out there, and just it's like something like a Marvel movie would try to do with World War II. It's like she's Peggy Carter or something. And the thing that really irked me as well is like the scene where they're talking about like how they feel distant from their families. Right, she's like, my family's closer geographically, but I still feel distant from them because they don't know what we go through. And I thought, bitch, you've got no idea what he goes through. Okay, you're like working in an office somewhere in London. Okay, this guy is getting shot at every day in a fucking tin can a mile above the skies of Europe. Right, you're not in the same league, so don't try to compare the two of you. Don't try and pretend that you're equals in this. You're not. You are not fighting on the front line. You're not risking your life every time you get into an aircraft. He is. That annoyed me. That really pissed me off, that line.
Just going to add in here, hold on a sec, for factual accuracy from Jeff Johnson. And thank you, Jeff, for the comment. You listened to the audio version of Crosby book last week before episode 6 aired. The book and the show pretty much aligned specifically on her character. She did share a suite with him. I can believe that maybe happened because it's not like they're sharing an actual room. The accommodations in Oxford for the the upper class guys that were there were they would have like four bedrooms off to a lounge, and that it's that sort of setup. I can believe that.
I'm actually gonna jump in on that one because I believe
Go on.
that was actually that he actually shared a suite with a female officer when he was in Paris after the war, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't whilst he was in Oxford.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay,
And
so
I think it was just after the war as well.
all right. Well, if anybody knows different, put a comment in the chat. Look, I accept that these things may have happened. I accept that he may have shared one of those unusual kind of sort of upper boys dorm room type setups in Oxford. And the conference happened. I know the conference happened. It did feel that a lot of her dialogue, though, was very, very forced and inserted and character expositional. It just felt a bit,
very present day. That's honestly what it felt like. They took a completely different writer, like someone who's super into like the current way of writing
absolutely
TV shows, and plunked them into to do this story thread. It felt so out of place and so bizarre. The character didn't ring true for me at all. The actress seemed perfectly nice, like no issues with her. I guess she gave what she was asked to do, but in terms of the writing and stuff, no.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we move on to the second narrative, which is that of Rosie Rosenthal, played by Nate Mann, great actor. I just want to say a scene that I feel was missing from this episode, and I think if it had been in it, it just would have elevated the whole episode. Now, it could have happened between Anthony Boyle's character, the one we've just been talking about. It could have happened with his character at the conference, or it could have happened with Nate Mann in the next storyline we're about to discuss, because we see a moment where Rosie sees a young lad crying in the garden, and I'll talk about that in a sec. And he doesn't go and engage with him because back then men don't talk about their feelings and that kind of thing. It was very, very rare. So, but what I would have liked to have seen between either this character or Rosie's character is a scene with them on their own with a British airman officer, and it would have been like 6 lines, and the dialogue would have been something like, so you've been bombing at night? Yeah. You've been bombing at day? Yeah. How is it? Yeah, bad. How's it for you? Yeah, bad. Drink? Yeah, drink. Oh,
yeah.
Here's to the war ending. Just
pretty much
that simple, nothing else, just a connected moment between the British and Americans in a social setting between two men respecting their respective missions, and maybe we'll get that later. Maybe we'll see something like that in episode 9 or something. But
how about a conversation?
They should have done that straight away, though. Really, because
wait,
one at a time.
Sorry, because we obviously everyone's rushing to make points here.
One at a time. Go on.
With a Spitfire pilot who was a veteran of the Battle of Britain, a guy who, like, we were fighting for our lives every single fucking day for like 6 months, like to try and prevent a German invasion. That was real tough stuff, and I lost like a whole bunch of my friends doing that. Just some recognition of like, hey, the RAF took enormous losses, and none of this would even be possible right now. The Americans wouldn't even be based here if we hadn't sacrificed a shit ton of planes and pilots and brave people who fought every single day.
But then, do we really need to see the context of the American airmen being here? I mean, personally, I just want to see the American airmen. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see conflict between any of the Brits and the Americans. We've seen that. That's done and dusted. That was episode 2. So we know that existed occasionally. For the most part, the Brits absolutely adored the Americans that were here. And I personally, I just want to see the Americans. I want to see them up in the air. I want to see the stuff on the ground in Germany, and then towards the end of the war. I don't really. It's just this whole thing, this strand, this thread. I know we've all gone over it, but it really, really made my toes curl, my arse clench, and made my skin crawl. I hated it.
I think I tend to agree in the sense that it might be easier to just not even like really touch on the whole British RAF thing. But if you're going to have to work it in, like, at least treat them with the respect that they deserve, because it's the show just kind of feels like it can shit on them at will. Like they're just portrayed as really arrogant, and like they don't really take risks, and it's really the Americans who are putting in all the effort, and it's a bit unfair, and it's a bit of a historical misrepresentation of what actually was going on there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, with that, let's segue into the second narrative of episode 6 is this: we're going to the Flak Hut. That's what it's known as. This was a real place. It did exist. I've been able to find that much out. And basically, just to talk through it a little bit. So it centers around Rosie Rosenthal's character seen there in the center, who's a major. He's played very competently by Nate Mann, who's another actor that I think is outstanding in the show. They arrive, they're greeted by a woman who sort of oversees scheduling and things, and they're basically told there's lots of recreational activities. They can ride horses, they can play backgammon, they can play tennis, they can go out on the river on a boat, all of these things. And she's an American initially, but if you watch carefully, she drops a couple of her lines in English, or at least one. So I was a little confused as to whether she was American or whether she was English. And she sort of is set up as a potential romantic interest for him, but that isn't followed through, which I was quite pleased about. There's a scene with a doctor where, you know, he says, do I really need to be here? And the doctor says, well, yeah, you can leave after 5 days. And then we have him sort of struggling to get some sense of routine, or just you become grounded again. He just wants to get back in the air. Then we have the next dig at the British, which is with the most stuffy person possible, giving a sermon, talking about the Magna Carta, derogatory comment about Americans, saying it took 500 years for you guys to read it or something. And the Americans saying, oh, well, we're under British oppression for blah, blah. I just thought that for me was very, very unnecessary. We have a scene with the crying in the garden where he sees another airman who's completely broken down. This is a PTSD storyline. No balls about it. Now, if the show was weaker, a writer who hadn't researched this period properly would have had him go up to that airman, and they would have talked it out, and there would have been like a, don't worry, son, you know, it's all going to be all right. I'm really glad they didn't do that. I'm really glad he felt ill-equipped to give that man any comfort, because he was confused himself. He was not his best, and you know, he was feeling lost like the rest of them.
Eventually, I suppose. Oh, sorry, on you go.
I'll just wrap this up. Eventually, we sort of see the men, his men under him are enjoying the time a lot more than he is, probably because he's got more of a sense of responsibility. And we end this with a card game and the telling of stories. In the narrative, it says some of them may have been true, most of them weren't, about the men processing what had happened to them and the losses and so on. And they make a mistake here, which I'll forgive them, because when people tell stories, they get them wrong. The mistake is this, but I don't think it's a deliberate one. I think that they just overlooked this, and it came about because of editing. In the card game, which may well have been another reshoot, they're talking about when you should have. This is the major I was telling you about. He hummed this song. He hummed this tune when we were the last plane left heading home. That's not true. The moment when they start humming the tune is after the planes have dropped their bombs and the 8 remaining planes are heading back to the UK, and they actually cut to more than one cockpit. So I don't know if they just got that wrong and somebody didn't realize how it was going to be edited, which is what it feels like. It doesn't feel like, oh, the guy just got it wrong because he's having PTSD. And I just feel that mistake shouldn't be in there because it's quite a major one. Other than that, I like that scene with the whole juxtaposition of different people telling different stories and as a way of processing it and all of that kind of stuff. But that's that storyline. Another pop at the British, but for the most part, this narrative was great. And as Drinker mentioned earlier, juxtaposition with Germany and POW stuff would have been enough. HistoryBro, what did you think about this narrative?
Yeah, I thought it was better than the other one. I thought that actor's pretty damn good. I thought that the storytelling bit worked quite well, because there's lots and lots of gallows humor when people have actually seen action. It's very, very, very common to be flippant and blasé about it. I thought the bit where he didn't approach the guy crying was good. I too was hoping that he wouldn't go and put his arm around him.
Yeah,
That was good.
Yeah.
Really
And then they would they'd hug each other and cry together.
Yeah. And the scene when he's up late at night and he said, look, you don't cry about it, you just get on with it. I thought that was good. I think that reflects, from everything I know about World War II, the greatest generation, even my grandfather, that's how they were about it. I've even spoken to a couple of times an RAF fast jet pilot, and they're very matter of fact about things. He told me a few stories about where him and people he knows have become very close to death, very, very close to death, and they're very just matter of fact about it. Just, you know, if you're going to die, you're going to die. That's it. You don't cry and moan about it as you're going down. You just take it on the chin. I thought, but one criticism I would have, and it annoyed me more than anything in the other one with the crowbarred in bloody 2024 feminist character, was that British priest or pastor or whatever
Magna Carta
about the
sermon.
Magna Carta thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous. Whoever wrote that is either trolling us or is a 13-year-old. It's absolute nonsense. Of course, the Magna Carta is from the early 13th century. And, you know, so long before Christopher Columbus or Amerigo Vespucci, long before there was a United States or anything. So it's just complete bollocks, really. So yeah, it sort of, I think I tutted out loud as I'm sitting there on my own watching it, and I audibly tutted at that bit. And of course, the American has to get the boot in and say, oh well, if it wasn't for the tyranny of your king, it's just bollocks. So I'll leave it there.
That did feel a bit out of place. Blue Collar will go down the Brady Bunch line here.
It's like Bo said, I'm looking at the line right now at 20 minutes in. He goes, yeah, under his breath. Yeah, maybe if we weren't under the tyranny of your king for 400 years, like, but it is. We're 6 episodes in, and so far with this show, I thought World War II, I thought this whole us taking down, you know, Hitler and the Nazis was all about unity and brotherhood. And this entire episode, it feels like a big dick measuring contest. And yeah, I mean, I'm American, obviously. I want to see pro-American stuff, but it also is a massive disrespect to the British people. And like, how would they like it if, like, say this was a British production and basically the Britons were the good guys and the Americans were useless morons? I mean, people would take just as much offense to that. And it's like Drinker said, you know, people tend to forget, like, remember the term World War II. This wasn't just like one country involved with taking down these people. This was a global effort. And yeah, it does feel like a massive disrespect to like all the stuff that other nations, other countries went through to help take. Yeah, it wasn't just the Americans doing the shit by ourselves. That's very arrogant.
But otherwise, the rest of the storyline you're okay with, the acting and so on.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it. I did like the third mission, the third side plot with the POW stuff. That's the part I liked the best.
Yeah, well, we're coming to that. Don't worry, I'll save the best till last, obviously. Drinker, you're under Blue Collar, not literally, of course.
Well, it can be, you know.
For the right price, he's
give me another bottle and we'll see what happens, you know.
Okay.
Anyway, overall, I think this made for a nice counterpoint to the POW stuff. Obviously, because just from a visual point of view, it's very idyllic, the surroundings they're in, and I think it's a good episode to catch breath after what we had in the previous one. You know, it's obviously a very mission-oriented, action-oriented episode. You need time like this to I guess, regroup and catch your breath. And this felt like a good time to do it. It didn't indulge in too much melodrama or anything like that, which I thought I very much appreciated. The reactions to say that the guy who's breaking down just felt real. You know, he felt awkward. He didn't want to intervene, I suppose, and he just wanted to give the guy space. And it felt like a very real reaction. You could tell he was unhappy about it. You know, he wanted to help the guy, he just didn't know how to do it. So he thought it was best to just leave him alone. And again, from his point of view, you know, there was no big emotional outpourings from him either. He was just taking this time to perhaps reflect on the things that he'd done, the things he'd seen, and not get too much into the melodrama side of things. So I think it worked well. I was pretty happy with this plot thread on the whole. The whole bit with the Magna Carta thing, yeah, that stuck in my craw a little bit. It felt like just a needless attempt to set up a straw man to have a bit of conflict with the Brits that I don't think was necessary at that point in the story.
Yeah. Okay. Fab, Inside Man. What were your thoughts?
I thought it was a bit milquetoast, to be honest with you. It was better, but I thought it was a little bit of a milquetoast approach to it. I think, I think we could have actually have seen an entire episode of this. I think this would have been a fairly decent midpoint in the whole series. I would have liked to have seen more of everybody there, especially Rosie Rosenthal. Having said that, it does make a pretty good kind of counterpoint to everything that's going on in the next narrative. It really does. So it does work, but I just thought it was just a little bit kind of. I thought it was underplayed. I thought it was a little wishy-washy, and I thought the all of the the much hilarity that was had by all, didn't even make me so much as crack a grin. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was a bit kind of weak, but it was okay. It was better than the first thread, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Northern. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with Inside Man a bit. Maybe if instead of having 3 plot threads, maybe just have 2: the PTSD one and the escaping from the Germans, and that way you got the side of one person trying to come to terms with the war that he's dealing with, and another is trying to survive it. It would have been a nice little counterpoint to it, maybe. But apart from that, it just kind of didn't interest me that much. I didn't think it could have been written maybe a bit more punchier, because I kind of forgot most of that storyline, because maybe because I was cringing at the first one a bit too much and being enthralled by the third one. It's but like I said, it is still better than the first thread, but like it could have been better. It could have been executed a bit better, in my opinion. But the heart's in the right place, though. I'll give it that.
Interesting. Some comments in the chat. Foxhound, I think the show is awful. Much better stuff on TV. Please put your list down. If you say She-Hulk, I'm going to be concerned about your well-being.
Yeah.
This comes to my point, because this is where we've got a new writer on, and I really hope the new writer isn't totally responsible for some of the bad stuff that we're talking about here.
Was this not John Orloff, this episode?
No, I don't think this is John Orloff. This.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to have to cut on. Can someone get me the name of the writer, please? So that we can digest their career credentials a bit. Ian Burge, the Magna Carta and Chamberlain thing were off for me, but the inter-allied jabs are fine generally. It's Yank bashing followed by Brit bashing. I mean, look, some of it's fine, especially if you'd had all that bashing stuff and it had been counterbalanced with that scene that I described, 2M and sitting down, just having a very sort of, matter-of-fact connection over their mutual sacrifices, the respect for each other of risking their lives and knowing that they're both doing a very difficult job. If there had been a counterpoint to that and we'd seen that unity, I'd be fine with it. But it just feels very just repetitive and banal and like, oh, let's have another dig at this is another scene. Have another dig.
I think as well, like if both sides had valid points as well, I think it would be more entertaining or fairer, because it's like, as it stands, the Brits are very much portrayed as being in the wrong in every situation. Maybe if their digs might have been, hey, you're a bunch of Johnny-come-latelys, we were fighting the war for 2 years before you guys showed up. Something like that. Like, okay, fine.
Like at least
they've got... Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, at least they've got a point then. But as it stands, it's pretty much like, yeah, you guys are out having fun. How dare they? Like when they might die the next day.
Yeah, but we've already we've already kind of seen all of that in episode 2, really. So there was no necessity for it to be sort of plugged into this particular episode. All that stuff in the pub, so and it is a kind of excuse me, it is a kind of we know, we get it, don't keep laboring the point, we understand.
Yeah, plus didn't Barry Krogan's character actually agree with him? Because he was saying maybe those British were right, maybe we should start fighting in the dark. But And that was like a couple of episodes ago, and they're still fighting in day.
Well, he was
Then
obviously
again,
wrong because he
yeah.
got shot down. So, you know.
Someone said it earlier. I think it might have been Inside Man about. Well, there's just this general thing that the feeling in most general terms of Brits towards Americans during World War II. Largely, we absolutely loved them and adored them, and were sort of bowled over by how big and brash and bold and movie star like they were,
especially our women, I believe.
but
Yeah,
right,
the ladies really liked them, because they had like all their own teeth and they were taller than 5 feet and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
quite different from the Brits at the time.
And I'm actually an Anglo-American. My father was born and raised in Oregon, and I've got lots of cousins in America. Been to America lots of times, so I feel like I can actually say something like this. But the general feeling, again, just very, very generally, most Brits kind of think Americans are cool, right? Most Americans kind of think Brits are kind of cool in some way. But there's also the opposite. Some Brits hate Americans, right? They think they're dicks, right? And some Americans think Brits are just arrogant dicks, right? I feel like the writer of this is one of those Americans that kind of hates the Brits, and it's just try to find places here and there just to have digs, just to make us look like arseholes.
I think it is one of those. It is one of those things where you have to really sort of understand where the where the diktat has come from. You have to write this. We want you to write that. So where the where the orders have actually come from, they've come from the the executives, the studio executives. You are not going to be writing anything that we are not going to approve of. So write what we tell you. You can stick to this, but you're still going to wedge in a few little bits and pieces like that, because most executives do believe that their audiences are dumb.
Right.
Welcome back, Blue Collar. I'm sorry you got shot down there as our only American.
I know. It's
I
almost
was
like
just
a
going to say one
conspiracy.
last thing.
Sorry. Go on, mate.
There are some Americans that, for some reason, have got a chip on their shoulder about the Brits. There really are some like that.
Yeah.
Like there are some Brits that have got.
It's that whole burning down the White House thing, isn't it? You guys need to let that one go.
Yeah. How many times do we have to apologise for 1812? For God's sakes. No. There are some Americans that have got a chip on their shoulder about the Brits, and they think that we all think that we're superior to them, and that we think they're just our sort of half retarded cousin type thing, and they're angry about it. They're angry with us. And I just feel like whoever was in control ultimately of this whole project, Masters of the Air, and some of the dialogue is one of those people. And what can you do? I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit, and Lance, you want to keep this heavily regimented, but just they say in one of the other strands that the RAF did hit something after all. I mean, there's just no need for it. It's just no need for it.
I did have a kind of decometer sort of like count of how many times I had a stab at the British in this, and it was like 4 times. Just once would have been sufficient. And as we say, we've already had it in other episodes. Drinker, you were going to add something.
I was just, for some reason, I was just weirdly reminded of a scene from The Great Escape where one of the British officers says to Steve McQueen, like, I think they've had a bit of moonshine or something, and he says to him, like, how are you managing over there? Are you doing all right without us?
Yeah.
And McQueen's like, yeah, we're getting by.
Now, gentlemen, I'm not saying that this new point of information is in any way related to any of the issues that we're discussing that we don't like about the episode. And there's a lot in the episode I do like. But the episode had 2 directors, one of whom was Anna Boden, director of Captain Marvel.
Oh, you are shitting me.
Oh, boy.
That explains
it all makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Right?
It all makes sense.
Jesus.
So
yeah, I wonder what
thank you,
scene.
Melvin.
I wonder what scene. Yeah.
I am honestly surprised that one of the Brit officers didn't tell him to smile more.
I'm guessing she would have been on the reshoots. I'm guessing.
Why would you do that?
Because
why
the
would
other
you bring on
director,
that?
because the first director wouldn't have been available for the reshoots, so probably because they're now booked on another job, so they bring somebody else in to direct. And I'm guessing that the reshoots were all primarily the Oxford stuff and maybe some pickups for some of the Rosie stuff. which is interesting when we're talking about the content that's in the show and what we'd like to see more of and less of and all the rest of it. And we know that there's loads of stuff missing that was filmed that isn't in these episodes because an inside man has told us this. Literally. So I'm curious as to, it'd be great to see a compilation of all the stuff that they felt didn't work. I bet some of it's gold, but hey.
Can you imagine some Apple executives sitting around a table and they're all sort of regime wokeists, and they just say, look, we need a strong female character. Just write it, just make it happen, just crowbar it in, just do it, just do that. I imagine
and this was the best they can do.
And the thing is, it wouldn't be difficult to write a strong, interesting female character in a World War II setting. There was a shit ton of them. Like, women did serve in the military back then. Even like women who were just as civilians back then, they endured a lot. They had to put up with a lot, and they became very strong, stoic people as a result. You could explore all these different aspects of it.
Yeah,
but instead, it's like we get the most tokenized, like weak ass 2024 version of what they think a strong female character is meant to be, especially from the 1940s, and it just comes across as so disingenuine, and it takes you right out of the experience.
Yeah, definitely.
They all seem very respectful towards the men. They aren't like trying to get one up on them.
Yeah, well, like you're saying, because it's almost like what Drinker would say with modern stuff. It's like, I'm not respecting what you've done. It's that you don't have it as hard as I do every single time. Or like, we're equal. Like, well, there's different versions of equality, but not
well,
like
I think, like that bit where she corrects the men around her, in that conference scene. Like, you kind of played it off as a bit of a joke, Lance, but you're right in the sense that, like, if a woman was to speak out of turn like that, especially to superior officers, she would be told to get the fuck out, like, and shut up. Like,
this is what I couldn't understand.
Get away with stuff like that.
That was a subaltern, for Christ's sake. It was a subaltern talking to superior officers.
Not only. I don't know if I can emphasize this enough. That kind of behavior would not be tolerated back then. You just wouldn't get away with it. Like, it's not 2024 back then.
I mean, not only that, but just on technical points alone, and this was a very, very regimented thing back then. After hours, so that scene is after the conference is finished. It's like a post-drinks bash, and it would have taken place in the officers' quarters. And I can tell you now that all officers' quarters, regardless of rank and so on, were male only. They were male only environments. The waffies and nappies, and these are not the dances and the dinner halls and the dining halls. And if it's an officer's quarters or an officer's library or whatever they would have at those places, they were men only, as most of the clubs and things were back in this time period. It was a very, very sexist time. It is the 1940s,
It kind of reminded me, I mean, I don't want to sidetrack too much, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of the sort of dynamic in Operation Mincemeat, which just I thought was appalling. That kind of dynamic between the girl. I mean, she did exist, but it was nothing like that. It just felt very kind of, now. It was very, very now. And
Kelly MacDonald,
like I say,
okay, well, look, we'll so that's the second storyline. Then we have our third narrative, and they all get roughly equal screen time, I guess. And let me just talk through this before we hear opinions on it. So Bucky, one of the two Bucks in the show, as he's crashed, as we know, played by Callum Turner, a good performance from Callum Turner. Again, I personally don't have any problem with the acting in this show. I think it's universally excellent, and some actors really are way cut above as well. They're really first class. But it starts off with him kind of on the run. He's kind of like digging up vegetables and things. This is the pre-title sequence. He dives into a swamp to hide from men with shotguns, one of whom says, come out, Americana. We won't hurt you, and I'm going to fire my gun to prove that I'm not a threat to you, which I felt very strange. And then he's backing up. He gets captured, and we have that classic line: "For you, the war is over."
You fucking
Yeah.
Lance and I were talking about this on the phone, and he said that to me. I was like, I don't believe you. That cannot be the line. It
now,
is.
I mean, that line was said obviously quite a lot, and you only need to read Battle Action magazine from the 1960s to see how many times it turned up in numerous comics, and everyone was called Hans, you know, in the German army. But I mean, yeah, how do things become a cliche? They become a big cliche because they're frequently said and so on. But
and it's in all their memoirs.
I just
every one of their memoirs.
Yeah, I mean, so people were told this. So, okay, you could argue that it was accurate. You could argue even that maybe that's his account. That's what the Germans said to him. That doesn't mean you have to put it in the show, though.
Yeah,
you could have done something different with that. He just could have just gone hands up or something like that, you know.
I'm honestly disappointed that the interrogator didn't say to him, like, "We have ways of making you."
Well, let me talk through the rest of this narrative, and then we'll get on to that, mate. Okay, so he's captured. We have the titles, and then next time we come back to him, he's in a truck with some other Americans. He doesn't know them. They're from different bomb groups. They're debating whether they can escape. And then ultimately they're taken through this bombed out German town, which was a constructed set. Here it is. Very, very effective scene. And the funny thing was, I said out loud as I was watching this scene, my God, if they got taken through there in reality, the people would have killed them. And there is quite a long segment where no one notices them. And I was actually going, I'm going to moan about this on Sunday. But fortunately, they did exactly what I thought would have happened. And apparently this did really happen more than once. And, you know, people got very angry. They kind of attacked the group. Yeah. The Germans don't really give a shit about them. So one of them's shot in the head, you know.
Several of them are shot in the head.
I think. 3 of them are executed.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And he's knocked out. And then the next thing, he wakes up on a cart. He's being towed into the wood by some locals, and they go to bury the bodies. This sort of scene, this kind of stuff definitely happened. I think it was good that this was included. This was a powerful moment. It was you know, quite interesting. And there are various accounts of British and American airmen being taken through towns right after they've been bombed as a deliberate psychological torture on them. I don't know whether we ever did that to the German pilots in the Blitz, but anyway, this did happen. So whether people think they like the scene or they don't like the scene, it did happen. Then we have eventually he escapes. He gets found by some sort of regular border guards who turn him over to the Luftwaffe. Now, just for the benefit of people watching, each different branch of the German army was responsible for the respective prisoners of war of the respective branch of the enemy forces. So the Luftwaffe would look after all the American and British pilots, and the German army would look after all the regular army, and so on. In this scene, and I know people are going to have comments about it, we then have an interrogation scene. Now, for the benefit of chat, this is a real German actor with a real German accent. This actor has been in loads of stuff. I've already been following his career since I saw him in Dark. He plays Lieutenant Hausman. The actor is Lewis Hoffman. I happen to think he's very good. And I have to say, I was waiting for "We have ways of making you talk" after the line of, you know, the war's over.
Stroking a cat.
I liked this scene. I thought it was good.
I was getting slight like allo vibes, and only British people are going to get what I'm saying there. But...
Yeah, it was leaning.
Yeah, it does look like him. It looks like him. Yeah.
It was leaning into that a little bit, but I think the actor was really clever with it. He was doing that whole thing of, "Hey, look, I'm your friend. I'm a fellow airman. You know, if you just like tell me this," and he tries to get him to tell him little things that wouldn't seem that important.
Do you like baseball?
The fact that he knows all the information about him, and it was an interesting scene. And again, they had a standard sort of interrogation technique. This is pretty accurate. So, you know, I quite liked the scene, and I like the actor. Ultimately, he's turned over to prisoner of war camp, which is Stalag Luft III, I think the exact title of it is. Somebody
That's the Great Escape one, isn't it?
It is the Great Escape one, and they're reunited at last.
Hey, there he is.
Spoiler alert.
Elvis.
He's still managing to look cool as fuck, even when he's a prisoner of war.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, Austin Butler he's a James Dean of the modern times. Got to say it.
I think he's got big things ahead for him.
Yeah, I mean, they've earmarked out his career well ahead of time. The guy to his right has got my chin. I don't know what's happening there. I wonder where I lost it. So, but there are various other characters in the prison that we've met before that we suddenly realise are alive. We get like a pullback shot of the whole thing, which I've got here, and they built probably about 4 huts and a couple of towers that you can see there, and the rest is all CG. But nevertheless, it's a great shot. And before we go to people's opinions, I'm just going to show you a couple of other things. So the real prison itself was actually located southeast of Berlin. So if you were planning on escaping, you were going to have a pretty difficult time. And this is the same prison where the Great Escape happened, as depicted in the film, which, as Drinker will tell you, is 100% historically accurate. But
it's 100% awesome, Lance. Okay,
it's one of the best war films ever made, in my opinion. This is the location where it was actually built. So the set was built around here. And the irony is, and this is ITV Studios Bovingdon at the old Bovingdon airfield. The irony is, there's a real prison like right next door. I was kind of thinking how weird that must have been for a prisoner looking out the window and sort of seeing guard towers and barbed wire being constructed within view, and if they could indeed see that far, or kind of hearing action and gunshots and dogs and shit going off just a few hundred meters away. That must have been quite strange. Maybe they got extras to play the prisoners there in those scenes.
Yeah, bit of authenticity there.
Could have happened, quite possibly. And then the real prison was located here. Nothing left of it now, of course.
Can you zoom out just so we get a feel for where it is?
That's exactly what I was going to do. There is a museum here apparently, and if I zoom out, when you think 3 people that took part in the Great Escape did get away. One of them went all the way through to Spain, James Coburn's character. One of them went, 2 of them caught a ship to Denmark. That's nothing short of amazing, isn't it?
Damn, they were able to travel that far through occupied Europe. I mean, that's incredible.
With no food and I mean, the guy that got to France. Look how far France is away. How much of occupied Germany he had to get through to get to.
And the Alps.
We should probably save this for the Great Escape episode, HistoryBro, that we're
yeah.
But I thought that would be just interesting to show everyone where it was. I quite like this storyline for the most part. I didn't have a problem with it apart from those lines of dialogue that have been mentioned. HistoryBro, what did you think?
Yeah, it's clearly the best, most engaging narrative strand of the 3. Clearly, obviously, and you're really invested in Buck, aren't you? The 2 Bucks and the navigator chap. There's sort of
this one's Bucky, I think.
Bucky, Bucky, Buck, and the navigator. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was very good. It was the best bit for me. So on the interrogation part, I thought that was done quite well, fairly well. The acting all round was great. I thought he's obviously the good cop. Suggesting that if and when you're up against the actual Gestapo, the political secret police, they're not going to be good cops. I thought that was done well.
That was kind of an attempt to trick him as well, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, because they didn't really do anything with him after that. They didn't turn him over to the Gestapo.
An unspoken sort of tension there that I thought, for me anyway, worked quite well. But when I didn't know that Bucky was going to go to Stalag Luft III. I didn't know there was going to be any Stalag Luft III story in this entire show. And so right at the end of this episode, when it cuts to that and it comes up the writing down the bottom, I again audibly like went like that, like, oh, okay, it's going to be it's the Great Escape. There's going to be a Great Escape story within this show.
Did you clap your hands with glee?
Almost, yeah, almost. Not quite, but yeah, almost that. And even I know that Buck wasn't dead, but when you finally see him, there's the reveal right at the end of the episode that he is in fact there and alive. Again, it worked for me. If I'd been a more emotional person, I might have welled up, but not quite. But no, that would really work for me. I was very happy, pleased to see that that he was there and alive. And just to say a couple of things then about Stalag Luft III, that it's really right on the Polish border. You did a couple of my talking points already. Absolutely remarkable that anyone actually got away, because genuinely, three guys actually got away and got into safety. Absolutely remarkable. I wonder how much this show is going to go into the sort of Roger Bushell story, the three tunnels and all that sort of thing. Of course, I hope they do. A lot of them, as you say, a couple of people that got away went north into Scandinavia, Denmark. A lot of them tried to go south to Czechoslovakia, and then maybe there'd be some sort of underground movement, get them down into the Balkans or Greece, and ultimately to Turkey. But yeah, one guy got to Spain. Incredible. When I saw that it was going to Stalag Luft III, I was sort of quite happy with that. Very interesting. I didn't think it would go there. Those are my thoughts and feelings on it.
Just an interesting point to note, and I guess we'll see next week, because it's a lot of it's going to be in the prison next week, is the prison had 3 sections to it by 1943 September. One section was for British airmen, and they were segregated from another compound, which was American airmen. And then the third section, which was added last, was for American officers. So the American NCOs were in a different part of the camp. By the end of the war, it had over 10,000 airmen.
Jesus.
Nearly 11,000 airmen in this camp.
That's like a town.
Yeah,
a town unto itself.
Yeah,
basically. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that there would have been some mixing, and some Brits would have ended up with the Americans and vice versa. So if they do a bit of that, I'm not going to care, but because I'm sure it's probable that
it's mainly a British thing, the Great Escape. Again, I mentioned Roger Bushell, the main guy, played by Dickie Attenborough in the film.
Yeah, Big X.
So largely sort of a British effort. But
indeed,
nonetheless, if the whole next episode is about that, I'll be happy with that. I'll take that.
I forgot to mention one thing in this storyline, which is this scene.
I was about to say that. Yeah, that's
beat me to
obviously.
It.
Yeah, we know exactly what it's representing, what it's showing us there.
And I'm glad there was no dialogue in this scene beyond kind of. I'm glad there was no "what's that" or they must be Jewish or it was just all these people screaming. That was all you needed. And
because correct me if I'm wrong, like the whole concentration camp thing wasn't publicly known at this point in the war. Like the Americans wouldn't really have understood what they were seeing there. Like they wouldn't understand where these people were going, why they were being rounded up or anything.
The British were aware of them, because by 1943 they would have had a lot of intelligence coming back about them. There were people that had escaped from camps by then, but obviously the scale of it wasn't known, and it was still being dismissed in a lot of quarters. But largely in the American press, the pilots would be oblivious to this kind of thing. So good scene, I thought.
Very effective.
One guy panics, thinks that's the fate that awaits them, and tries to run and is gunned down. Blue, what did you think of this?
Boy, Lance, well, the first thing when he lands, he cuts open that lettuce. I was thinking to myself that, boy, that's got to be like the best tasting lettuce you've ever eaten in your life.
It's worse than a lettuce, man. It's a cabbage.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can even tell.
It's a
I
cabbage.
thought it was a cabbage or a cauliflower, wasn't it?
Dear God.
Both are equally
Yeah.
tasteless.
Yeah. But, you know,
Yeah.
as I'm watching Lance, I'm thinking to myself, or everyone in the panel, that be careful how you word this, but he's essentially, his position is given away by 3 kids pointing and saying, Americano, Americano. And I'm like, a different soldier in a different situation wouldn't have given those kids the opportunity to say Americano. Like, he got captured because of they gave away his position, and different people wouldn't have, allowed that to happen. So, I mean,
I think at that point, like, if you put it this way, right? If you get apprehended then by the police or like local soldiers, and they find out that you fucking killed 3 children,
Yeah.
you ain't getting to a prisoner of war camp. They will just take care of you right there and then. So I think you'd have to think very carefully, like, okay, how far do I want to go in order to try and stay on the run here?
And most people were not career professional soldiers who were sort of immune to the horrors of war. These were regular guys that were butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers in their other lives.
Yeah.
So
particularly airmen,
bombs
like
on people you can't see is one thing. Killing 3 kids with a pistol.
I think at a certain point, like if you're shot down in Germany, at that point in the war, you might as well just surrender, because you're not going to be able to, disappear. You're not going to be able to go on the run for long.
Yeah, one thing I would say, other than combat itself, one of the things I find most fascinating about wars are the stories of escape and evasion. It's obviously, stating the obvious, it's very, very difficult, and most people fail, of course, especially if you're not special forces. If you're a pilot or something, your job, all your expertise are in aviation, not in the art of escape and evasion, right? So being a long way behind enemy lines, your chances of getting back to Switzerland or something, or Turkey,
It must have been
tiny, absolutely tiny.
It must have been such a weird experience for the airmen who found themselves in this situation. It was like, this morning I had breakfast in England. I was there having my bacon and eggs and coffee, and now here I am. I'm in the middle of Germany. I've been shot down and I'm on the run. Like, what a weird juxtaposition of situations to be in.
There's accounts from a lot of downed airmen in Vietnam, and even some Brits in the first Gulf War, where the shock of being in base and then being in the cockpit, and then suddenly you're just in the jungle on your own, or in the desert on your own, hundreds and hundreds of miles behind enemy lines. The shock, the absolute shock of that. We can barely, we can't really ever understand what that must have been like.
Definitely not.
Yeah. I thought what was quite interesting about this episode with going through the town, obviously the comparison between the London bombings, the Blitz and everything, but I mean that whole thing was completely accurate. Going through a lot of history books, as I have done sort of over the years, I mean the accounts of some of the pilots, some of the down pilots that are paraded through the towns, and but a lot of them were actually used to clear up the rubble, to clear up the towns after bombings. And one of them was Kurt Vonnegut, author of Catch-22 and Slaughterhouse-5 and Cat's Cradle and all that kind of stuff, which is, I mean, he actually based, I think most of his book, Slaughterhouse-5, on his accounts, his wartime accounts of in Dresden during the, the firestorm of Dresden, the bombing of Dresden. And he was part of a small group that was used to clear up the streets after the bombing, and he also mentions, he talks about the civilians literally, lynching these airmen, in some cases actually literally ripping them from limb from limb, tearing them apart, physically tearing them apart, let alone just shooting them. I thought that was a really interesting part of this story. The comparison, the flip side, him actually seeing, the devastation of the German bombs on London, and seeing the American and British bombs on the German civilians. I thought that was quite an interesting perspective to have given him. So much more in this thread of the story than there was in either of the other two. I absolutely would have loved to have seen more. Nice to have seen Frank Murphy in the camp. His account is an incredible survival account. If you haven't read that, that's an amazing book. But he gives a really stark and harrowing account of his time in Stalag Luft III, and the death march afterwards. So whether they're they're going to keep a lot of that in the story, I really don't know whether they're going to keep it in. There is so much missing. There's a ton of stuff that's missing.
They built a massive
that I
set.
absolutely know.
They built a massive set for that bombing
Yeah.
sequence. I've seen the pictures of it. I think we showed them last week. And is it just going to be for that one scene, or are they going to use it for anything else?
Can I just say something super quick, just to build on what Inside Man said there?
Yeah.
It's funny you should mention Kurt Vonnegut and Slaughterhouse 5, because I read that about 2 months ago, and it's very, very, very powerful. A lot, absolutely what you said, completely true, and also that people were, all sorts of people, everyone really were, it seems, or at least in Vonnegut's account, were transported around Germany in unbelievably packed boxcars like that. It wasn't just the experience of Jews; it was the experience of everyone. They put you, they'd cram you in like sardines into those boxcars, and at the end of your journey, wherever it was, half of you might already be dead, or they would leave you in sidings. They would leave you in sidings for sometimes days on end with like no water or something, and a lot of you just die in those boxcars. I was going to mention Slaughterhouse 5, so brilliantly well done there, Inside Man, for getting ahead of me on that one. It's a great read for anyone that's interested. Should read that or get it on audiobook or something.
Can anyone on the panel guess which Hollywood movie introduced me to the works of Kurt Vonnegut and Slaughterhouse 5 by it being in the dialogue in the film? Your starter for 10. Okay, it was the film Footloose. It's one of the books that's banned in the town, and Kevin Bacon says, "Yeah, Slaughterhouse 5, it's a classic." Oh, that's terrible. No, we've taken that book. We got that book removed from the school. It's in a scene where he's talking to, I think it's his uncle.
Why would it be removed? Because it's so horrific. I mean, it does the accounts of Dresden, people melting, children melting in the streets.
That's why it's taken out. It's because the town is going through this massive period of censorship based on religion, and
it's been a long time since I've seen Footloose. That's all I can say.
Well, mate, you've got to look at the underlining intellectual narrative of that film. It's actually very good.
Very prescient for today.
But yeah, so most people would not expect that answer. Somebody else mentioned Mother Night, which was also written by Vonnegut, I believe. That was made into a movie, which was directed by my old mentor, Keith Gordon. And Keith Gordon also directed A Midnight Clear, which if anyone on the panel has not seen that film, Drinker, I know this will be number 777 on your list of things I have to watch.
Please keep adding to it.
But this is set in World War II, right before the Battle of the Bulge. It's a platoon of American reconnaissance soldiers, Ethan Hawke, Matt Dillon, Gary Sinise. A really, really good cast in this movie.
They really need to work on the tagline for that, though. It honestly sounds like the intro for a porn movie. At the front lines of life,
funny enough,
the edge of innocence, the beginning of manhood.
They all lose their virginity in the film. That does happen.
Oh, well, that's good. At least.
So that's not inaccurate, and it's not in a horrible way either. But yeah, I was lucky enough to see this at the London Film Festival, and it was actually at the screening of this film that I met Keith, and that's how he ended up becoming my script writing mentor. But It's a little independent film. It's a great film, shot on a really modest budget, but just a really good war movie. They kind of make peace with the German patrol opposite them, and the German patrol want to surrender, but they have to make it look like a fight happens so none of their family get executed for them deserting. And as you can imagine, it all goes a bit wrong. But it's a really good little World War II film that not a lot of people have seen, funnily enough. So, yeah, okay. So, I heard from a inside man, Northern. What were your thoughts on this storyline?
This was when the episode really started to get good, and since we found out that this episode was also directed by the same to Marvel, I'm guessing she did not direct this storyline because it's actually really good. And like you said, when they see the train with the Jews being carted off, and no one's saying a word, that's visual storytelling, and only someone competent could have done that part. And the guy who plays Bucky, he's cool. I like this actor. I want to see him do more stuff. He's got a bit of swagger. He's got a good masculine presence. He looks like someone who could be a fucking tough bastard in real life. And it does make me a little bit more excited for the next episode, even though some parts made me a little bit skeptical. But I have a feeling this show is going to be kind of a mixed bag as it goes along. We're going to see some really good stuff, but a lot of cringe-worthy stuff. But I hope I'm wrong, and it actually turns out to be better than expected.
I mean, we've only got 3 episodes left. It's not a lot of this episode. By the way, I don't know if anyone noticed, but it had a longer running time than all of the others.
Yes.
Yeah, it was 5 minutes extra, and I mean, I could have done.
You lied to me as well because you told me this was a short one.
Oh, that was just a fib to get you to come on, but
you dick.
I knew you'd be invested in it, and want to talk
to be fair, you're still using.
It feels short.
I was pleading my case with Lance earlier. I was like, I need to do a catch-up stream with Mauler tonight, and I haven't had a chance to watch the episode yet. And he was like, don't worry, it's a short one. Okay, I'll watch it then.
Well, it is
like
short.
An hour and 5 minutes. That doesn't feel very short.
It's under an hour. I mean, which is short. It should be longer. I've said this every week. All of the episodes should be longer. But it is the longest so far.
Well, I did time it. It's usually
sorry about that.
15 minutes of promos, man. God, there's so much credits and after credits and post credits and recap credits. Like, come on.
You at least get to skip all that stuff at the beginning, so that saves you like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean the running time of it, I think, including the opening titles, was like 51 or 52, so probably 49 minutes without the titles. But yeah, I just I wish they were shorter. There's been a lot of debate in the chat about when the West at large would have become aware of the plot to exterminate the Jews and the concentration camps and so on. Darth Plato, who I know is a big history buff, referred to quite a well-known escape that happened from Auschwitz, and the guy did get back to the UK. I mean, that's deserving of a film of itself. And I've heard about this story before, and I'm sure HistoryBro, you'll know the guy Rudolf Verber. But the thing was, he didn't get back. He didn't escape until 1944. His report was kept secret initially because people weren't sure what to do with it. It didn't get widely circulated to other governments by the British until July of 1944. This episode all takes place in 43. So, September 43. We're going into the 43 winter in the next episode and then into 44. So I imagine that episode 8 is going to be D-Day because we know that's happening because it's in the opening titles. So 7 is going to be, I guess, mostly about being a prisoner of war. But yeah, so I don't think the public at large, there would have been lots of talk in the American Jewish community, sure, because they would have had a lot of relatives flee Germany with awful stories and all of that kind of stuff. But
I think they would imagine that they'd been rounded up and put in camps, but I don't think they then would have known what was being done with them once they were there.
Yeah.
I think it was probably felt like they were just prisoners rather than what was actually happening to them. Because I remember that scene in Band of Brothers where they come across a concentration camp, and none of them knew how to describe it because they'd never been briefed on anything like this before.
A couple of things I'd say about that is that, so for a start, the Germans had all sorts of camps. Only a very small number of them were sort of true extermination camps, like Sobibor or Treblinka or Auschwitz. Auschwitz was a number of different camps. And true sort of extermination camps were a bit later in the war, not that many of them, but they did have many work camps, and just prisoner camps, which weren't necessarily
transit.
actually
There were a lot of transit
extermination
camps, weren't there?
Right, yeah, loads
of
so,
tons of transit camps.
So the story, the question of what did people know of these extermination camps before they were actually liberated? So there would be some people. There've been rumours, and there perhaps people in the sort of intelligence services who may have would have known more. But the average people on both sides, it seems, knew very little. It was a shock to them. It was an actual shock to sort of the average person to liberate Belsen or to liberate Sobibor or something. So the average person is different to perhaps someone that was, worked in intelligence or had been debriefed. Someone like Truman or Roosevelt or Churchill or someone who obviously would have known more than the average person. So it was largely a shock right at the end of the war when these places were liberated. So that's when you watch World War II drama, and during the war they talk about the crimes at Auschwitz or Treblinka or something. That's not really accurate. But there you go. Different historians argue exactly about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed we've still got Holocaust denialists. But I've just pulled up Auschwitz. Another thing that people need to remember as well is that the Germans went to extreme lengths to cover this up. You'll read and you'll hear in the testimonies if you go to various museums where you've got the actual people that were in these places who survived. When we arrived, we were sometimes it was all dogs and they were pulled off trains and all the rest of it. Other times they arrived and it seemed very civilized and there was music playing and they went along through these gates that were all covered in flowers and vineyards and things, and that was all a deliberate ruse to disguise what was beyond. Now, if you look at the layout of Auschwitz, this is the ramp where people were unloaded from the train. But look how far the actual gates to the main camp are. So the idea being that no one, as they're getting off the train, could see what awaited them, which came up. And then the crematoria are further still. One of them's located up here, a crematorium one here and here. So even they're located out of sight of the main accommodation.
They thought it out very well, didn't
Yeah.
they, when they designed that?
And for anybody who's watching the film Zone of Interest, and that film is responsible for me actually checking all this out. The house that was owned by the camp commandant is actually quite far away, which just goes to show this is the section of the camp that remains, right? This section, this area here, which is now built up with supermarkets and whatnot and all the rest of it, these red brick buildings are all part of the original camp structure, and these would have been like the guards' quarters and stuff like that. And this is the house where Zone of Interest is located, and this is the this is the guard tower that they could see. But they weren't like right next to the crematoria or anything like that. That was much, much further away than is even suggested in that film. Yeah. So you can see how large this place would have been. It was massive. It would have occupied all of this as well. But this is the main nasty part of the camp here.
A couple of other things. So there was more than one. I think there's 3 separate camps really at that site, and and a lot of it is essentially reconstructed or rebuilt by the Soviets after the war. So I mean, it's an interesting site. I have to be careful what I say, but the numbers do change and get revised over the decades of exactly what did and didn't happen there. Yeah. Nonetheless, it was obviously no doubt that the unbelievable crimes happened.
Yeah, I mean, you can see where the other sub-camps are on the map here. There's this one up here, which is considered to be a sub-camp of Auschwitz. Long way away.
There's that film Conspiracy where, with Branagh. And the final solution was only sort of agreed upon, in 1943. So It's not like it was an extermination site from 1939 or anything like that. And so the camp evolved over time during the war. But yeah, something like Stalag Luft III is a completely different beast.
Yeah,
completely different.
Yeah, indeed. Well, yeah. So that's episode 6 of Masters of the Air. Then a bit of a mixed bag, but at least they got the chimneys and the roofs correct, and that's the most important.
Thank God. I was worried.
Right. No, I've had personal messages about that. It's been tremendous fun. I think they're going to start up a society for me. But yeah, so has been good. So before we do the rounds of what people have got coming up and final thoughts, actually we'll have final thoughts from everyone. Just want to extend my personal congratulations to Drinker for getting on board a producer of some considerable quality on his project Rogue Elements. There is a concept trailer for Rogue Elements on YouTube, and a lot of people don't seem to understand what a concept trailer is or a concept pilot. This is when you get what resources you can, you raise what money you can. You're not properly backed by a studio or a platform or anything like that. And you put together a taster reel. It's usually 3 or 4 or maybe 5 or 6 scenes. It's put together. And this becomes part of a pitch pack for a television show. And you say, this is kind of what it's going to look like, but with more money. And this is the tone of it. And this is kind of how we want it to look and so on. And these are the roles. But it's in no way the final product. It's merely a taster of what's to come. It's almost like a mood board in a way. The trailer has dropped. It's on YouTube. There's a great interview with Drinker and the director of that pilot, and also the producer John Kazar, who's one of the main producers on the 24 series. More importantly to me, he directed and produced the recent Kennedy 8-part miniseries, which was a fantastic piece of television with Tom Wilkinson in playing Joe Kennedy, the father. And yeah, I mean, this is a man who knows how to make quality shows. So, mate, my personal congratulations. It could not happen to a nicer guy. I'm so pleased to see you get professional people of quality in the business seeing what you've got, and they're going to help you take it forward. It's fantastic news. Fantastic.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, like to have John Cassar on board, obviously a guy who's hugely experienced in the business, 25-year veteran of the industry, to now be working with him. Like 24 particularly was one of the inspirations that got me right in the Ryan Drake series in the first place. And now suddenly I'm working with one of the guys who created it. So that's pretty damn cool. And yeah, like what we're producing with Rogue Elements, it is a complete movie in its own sense, or a short film at least. It's going to be about 40-45 minutes.
Yeah.
And the trailer is our trailer for the film. It's like it's all the stuff that we picked out as like to try and show you some of the cool stuff in it, but not give away too much. In a wider context, though, yeah, we're hoping that Rogue Elements is almost like a taster for what we could do if we had a bigger budget, and if we were to get this picked up as, say, a TV show or something like that. It gives you an idea of what the characters are like and what this world is going to look like. So who knows what's going to come out of that?
Yeah,
stay tuned for more.
The beginnings of a long journey, and mate, I certainly hope you'll come back and we'll do a special on it on the channel when you're like further along with it. And
yeah, I'll tear it to shreds, man, if it sucks.
I mean, that's it. I mean, Will's not creating it. It's based on a property that
I've got the ultimate get out, because I can say like, well, I helped out with the script, but I didn't direct it, so
It's not my fault.
That's a good. Trust me, that's a good position to be in. I think the final journey of it will be very different from where it is now, and I've every confidence it's going to be a good product. I'm getting some super chats just off the back of you being here, Drink. You need to pop on my channel more often. Clearly, congrats,
Yeah.
Drinker. Looking forward to the movie. P.S. Have you watched Korean drama marry my husband, need your thoughts. I actually misread that at first, and I thought it just said, P.S. Drinker, will you please marry my husband? And I thought that couple that we met in the bar in London are back again stalking you.
Yeah. I thought it was the woman that was into me, not the husband, but
Well, they were both pretty keen. That was all quite strange. Have you seen that film? I've seen it. It's very good.
I haven't. No, I haven't. I really need to watch more Korean stuff, because whenever I have, on the rare occasions, I've been very impressed with it generally. So, yeah.
And obviously, everyone will be wanting to pick up my new coffee table book, The History of Belgian Roofs.
Well, I think you should concentrate on chimneys.
Sales will go for the roof.
Roof is too broad. You don't want to get too spread thin.
That could be the tagline for the book. The roof is too broad. A few other people are congratulating you on the trailer there, mate. So all regulars on the channel, which is very lovely, and I'm sure some of them will come by you in the first place. So yeah, okay. So final thoughts then. Having done that little bit, final thoughts on this episode overall, and maybe what would you give it out of 10? HistoryBro, as you're the authority, you get to go first.
Sorry, kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's not the strongest episode for me. It's probably not the weakest, so I'd give it a 6 or a 7. Again, the thing with Bucky was very good, and some of the other stuff was some of the dialogue was fairly poor. Some of the that crowbarred in female character is was a bit annoying. So I don't know. I give it maybe a 6.
Okay.
But overall, I've got to say, just generally about the whole series is I'm still absolutely completely invested. If anything, this episode, despite all its shortcomings and annoying things, I'm still more invested than ever in the show. So that's my feelings. Not the best episode, but it hasn't ruined it for me.
Okay, fair enough. Drinker, your thoughts?
I think if it hadn't been for that weird, additional plot thread with the strong female character, it probably would have been an 8. Because I think it does make for a nice juxtaposition between the quiet, rural setting in England versus the really harrowing stuff in occupied Germany. As it stands, though, yeah, that thread really drags it down quite a bit. So I'd probably give it a 6. And it's, other elements of it, like the executions of the prisoners, were really good stuff. It's really gripping stuff. I'd probably say the interrogation scene sort of verges on parody. It just all feels like right on the brink of being a bit campy and silly. But hey, maybe that's just how it was played out in real life. I don't know. And yeah, like I say, I think if it hadn't been for those elements, I probably would have given it a strong 8 out of 10. It's probably a 6 though for me. It's
Blue.
Oh boy, I'll say 5. I'll go even lower because I did like the prisoner of war element, but that's 1/3 of an episode, and everyone would say from Drinker to the whole panel, the modern feminism stuff. And like I said, I'm no American on the panel, but constantly shitting on British people, and this stuff happened. The Magna Carta and tyranny. It's guys, this is 1943. That happened hundreds of years ago, and it just seems so out of place for the tone of that era. What's going on? So I would have preferred an entire episode of the POV. That would have been, I think, a way better episode.
Northern.
I think I will go for 6 out of 10 because it wasn't downright awful. It had a couple of things that annoyed me, but it thankfully didn't ruin it too much for me. But it doesn't deserve a higher score, and it doesn't deserve a lower score either for it.
Okay. Inside Man, let rip, sir.
3 is that's the best I can do. That's the best I can do. And it's only because of that, that 1/3 of it. I mean, even the stuff in the the sort of flak shed, I thought was really lacking. There was just not enough there. You still didn't get to know Rosie Rosenthal. Just didn't really get to know him. You knew a few little bits and pieces about him, but you didn't really get to know him. That really spoiled by the you know, the really odd storyline with you know, Crosby and the girl in Oxford, and that just no, yeah, it's 3. That's the best I can do.
Can I ask one question, actually? 'Cause this is for Blue, actually.
Yeah.
Being
Oh, boy,
an
here we go.
American.
Here we go.
Jump in, mate.
What's with the whole, like, here's mud in your eye toast? I ain't never heard that in my life.
It's not something
Really?
that I listen. No one in my generation says it. It's definitely got to be a older generation. It's something I've seen through like cinema. But I mean, my parents don't say it. I guess my grandparents would have said it. But I mean, no one. I mean, I'm the same age as you, and like nobody in our 80s, 90s generation says that nowadays. So
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I think it derives from First World War, isn't it? I think it's that's where it kind of does derive from. So I believe.
I was going to say that it's just a very old-fashioned term. Yeah, that's all. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny part with slang is every generation has their version of slang, but even like I said, I knew of the terms like that from TV, but like no one I know that was born in the 80s says here's mud in your eye. Like
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. No, I just wondered.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of 6 out of 10 for me. Some really strong elements, some cliched elements. The acting, though, I mean, I'm a big fan of the actors. I think they universally do a pretty good job on this show with some really standout young talent, especially Nate Mann and Anthony. I forget his name now. Anthony Boyle. Two really good actors that can convey an awful lot with a look and no dialogue, and that is a particular skill set that not everybody has. So, and production design, all of that stuff is good. It's just a shame that there are some things that are letting this show down, because I mean, if I was to do an analogy of the episode of Band of Brothers, and we've been talking about doing that, maybe we will. I know lots of people have done it already. It would be more of a kind of long list of everything that's good. And I must have watched that show 20 times now. And I'm still picking up little things that I've missed, little nuances that people did with performances, or, you know, little things that different characters have got on in their locker, and details like that. That is really quite first class. So I think the flaws are more annoying because of the people that are attached to this production and the level of budget they had. If this was an independent, you know, independent produced thing, and they had 1 million budget an episode, which for me would be loads, but you know, you'd get a lot of things wrong. You just wouldn't have the money.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. There are no excuses. You know, you got what it's what £750,000, or sorry, $750,000 per minute you're using. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's a lot. If we're talking about the actual screen time, you know, $750,000 on average per minute of screen time. There's no excuses for mistakes.
Okay, so to round off, before I let my guests all plug their stuff, because we need to get Drinker up to those few extra thousand to that 2 million subscriber mark. Inside Man, as promised, I said I'd show this at some point. So just for you, and as we've talked about concept trailers and concept pilots and all the rest of it, this is a concept trailer for something else. I don't know when it will be made, but at your request, here you go, sir.
Because D Company is being assigned to carry out one of the most important tasks on D-Day, I can't think of anyone who has a more vital objective. Your company will be capturing 2 bridges intact, less than 500 yards apart, in a coup de main assault in 6 gliders. You will land at night and hold them until relieved. The main threat to you is the 21st Panzer Division. They've taken a beating, but they're an elite unit, well armed, with self-propelled guns, tanks, and plenty of artillery. If they counterattack straight away, you can expect a lot of casualties.
Do you ever get that feeling? What's that? You might not make it back.
You know, that's the first time I've been able to watch that trailer in probably about 5 years, because
Really?
most people will know that we got involved with some bad people. The film went tits up, and it was never shot. And I interviewed 10 of the veterans. 7 of them would have lived to be at the premiere if it had gone ahead according to plan. They're all dead now. Alan Marks, who did the visual effects footage for that, with the glider shadow coming over the coast, he's also dead. He got cancer. He got cancer, a really rare form of cancer that could have been treated in the United States, but was untreatable over here. His paycheck on Pegasus would have been about 250 grand. If these bastards hadn't fucked us over, I would have got him that money and he would have lived. So yeah, that's why I can't watch it. But I did say I would show it for you. That's the first time I've been able to watch it, because it brings back so many mixed emotions for me. There are 5 people that worked on that are dead now, you know, not to mention the veterans, all the families that were expecting it. It would have premiered at the 75th anniversary. The screen would have been on the bridge in Normandy. That's and that was the film that we would have opened about a year after Dunkirk, so we would have ridden that wave of success. And do you know who we had on our cast list, right at the top of our cast list to be in that film? Barry Keogh from Masters of the Air, because I'd seen him in 71, and I said to my casting director, that actor's going to be massive, get him in Pegasus, I want him as one of the glider pilots. And Callum Turner was on the casting list for a while as well. But yeah, and Henry Cavill was wanted to be in the film and actually called us about it. So it's difficult to put it on. But there you go. You've seen it.
It really does.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, Will, I know you know more about the story because I told you before. But
yeah,
there's stuff about it I can't really get into on here, and I get shit about it on the Pegasus Bridge Facebook page. Anytime I post about anything World War II or to support another independent film, because we got a massive following on there, I get all this shit about it. Comments, you know, the film's never coming out. When's the film coming out? And so I've done posts about it loads of times, but people they care about it. They care about the period. They want to see it happen. So that's why they're angry. I get it, but it's just not very nice to be on the receiving end of that all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah. The greatest movie that never was, Snazzy. That's 100% true. Unfortunately. Anyway, but you never know what's going to happen in the future. So, but do you know how much that was shot for? That trailer, 30 grand. Give me £1 million, and I'll make a great pilot for a World War II European show. So if that couple that just won £63 million on the lottery last week, and they did, it's a true story. If they're watching and you know you've got some access cash, get in touch via the Outcast Creative Facebook page. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's do a quick round of my guests. History Bro, what you got coming up? Anything new for people to see?
Yeah, I mean, every week on Lotus Eaters, my thing on there, Epochs. This week comes out every Sunday. Actually, was Edward II. So there's that, and also on my channel, I post all sorts of things on History Bro. Was the last thing I posted was a preview about the fall of Rome, about the Battle of Adrianople and Valens, and then Alaric and Attila the Hun and all that sort of thing. So History Bro, my channel, and also Epochs on the Lotus Eaters, the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. So that's me.
Blue.
Hey, well, in a half hour, I'm leaving, taking my kid to go see a special screening for Dune 2 in IMAX, and I'm looking forward to seeing this.
Oh,
Nice.
Hey, man.
I have to listen to what Chris Gore was on Critical Drinkers Open Bar, and the whole Chris is like, hey, I'm not going to spoil this. I'm reading the chat. It's like, Chris, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, he did. I'm not going to spoil this, but here's about 20 things.
He can't help himself. He gets too enthusiastic.
I to be fair to the guy, I mean, we all know it's going to be for me, half-hour previews, and it's a three-hour movie, so it's 3.5 hours. I mean, it's a lot to talk about, man.
I mean, I think we all know that the Fremen win, and Austin Butler's going to crack the knife fight. So
I know, Lance, you play gaming sometimes, but to the drinker as well. We got 4 days before Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and it's coming out at midnight, and the second that comes out, I'm grabbing that and popping it on PlayStation.
Yeah, I just want to get to the bit at the Costa del Sol on the beach. It looks fantastic.
It's like my sister loved Final Fantasy VII. She's like, Chris, I can't play the demo. I had to play the demo, and just seeing Sephiroth and that entire sequence in 4K, I'm like, this is only 2 hours of this game. And I'm like, this is our.
Yeah, because you and I are about the same age. So Final Fantasy VII, the original, was a fucking huge influence on me, way back in 1997, and I cannot wait to play the next part of it.
Yeah, Lance, for nothing, it's already it's not even out yet, but for 2024, this is my game of the year. Just based off that 2 hour demo, it's gonna be, man. So
fantastic. And of course, you're back on with me on Tuesday for the.
I'll tell you about Dune. So
yeah, we're not going to talk about Dune on Tuesday until I see it. Shush. Northern Bastard, what you got coming up?
Well, apart from Nielsen ratings on Tuesday with you and Losers Lounge with Blue, I'm just going to try and see if I can get my No Time to Die review this week. If not, I might try Land of Bad, because I've just seen that recently and it is really fucking good. It's a really good film, and Liam Hemsworth is very convincing in it. It makes me want to see him and Chris team up for Extraction 3 if that happens, and it'll be good to sort of review a movie that's just recently come out instead of just something old as well all the time.
Are you talking about Land of Bad?
Yes.
Yeah, I just watched that. Drinker, you'll definitely like that film, mate. So that's 778.
You will.
Cool.
Yeah, you will definitely like that film. Good little special forces action movie. Quite a nice, quite real, quite grounded film. Mostly practical effects. Some really good characterization and stuff. I like it. It's good.
Nice.
Inside Man, Retropolis Now. When is Retropolis Now launching?
Well, I'm in the middle of about 7 different edits, so I'm trying to kind of fine tune a few of them before they actually go on. So
you're going to hit the ground running.
They're going to be going on sort of. Yeah. I'm kind of working on about 18 of them at the moment at the same time. So, and it's going to be a regular sort of weekly thing, and then it'll, a few sort of streams interspersed with those, and hopefully I'm going to be doing something with Northern English Bastard very soon. So, we're
try to get your books on there, aren't I?
You cheating on me already?
That reminds me. I've also got a stream with Reservoir Dogs with the Goochman himself from Diabolical Soul. So
he's a great
that'll
guy.
be Friday, I think.
Like the Gooch, really lovely, really lovely streamer, good collaborator. Really like him. Fab stuff. Well, I've got the Nielsen ratings on Tuesday, 10 o'clock. My usual weekly roundup of all things film and TV. I'm going to be focusing on a few different things this week. Lots of different things to talk about. I've got the 5 Days at Memorial special on the 31st of March with Raven Dowder confirmed as a guest who was in the show.
Fantastic.
possibly a second member of the cast. I'm waiting for them to confirm. And I've had some very exciting conversations with some very exciting people about coming on for an interview. I can't say too much at this stage. I just don't like until someone's confirmed. But actor Damon Harriman, who was in Mr. In Between, a show again, Drinker. You've got to watch that show. You're going to watch one episode and you're going to binge.
You've not seen it yet?
3
Oh,
days.
God,
yeah.
It's homework.
Awesome.
No.
It's on the list.
The man's got 5,000 hours of stuff to watch, but put it near the top of your.
Put it to the top. No, believe me, it's
Put
great.
it near the
I love
top.
it.
You're gonna. I guarantee you're gonna absolutely love it. I mean, it's right up your street. Amazing character arcs, writing. We've done a special on season 1 already. So Damon Harriman, who plays Mr. In Between's boss, who runs the nightclub, great actor. He's been in loads of things. He's coming on the channel in April. I've just spoken to him, so he's a confirmed guest. We've just got to sort out the time. Then on the 24th of March, in the 8 p.m., of course, we're going to be reviewing this fantastic film. That's right. We're going to be reviewing The Thing, the musical, featuring the cast of the Muppets. We have a couple of Muppets coming in into the studio, as well as the film's producer and the film's technical advisor. There may even be some singing on that stream. There may be a reenactment of one of the songs from the movie. So don't forget to join us for that. That is definitely, absolutely 100% not a parody. I may be lying about that last part, but the rest of it's all true. So fantastic. As usual, all my guests' information is down below. If you want to check out their channels and things, please do. I've got some wonderful end credits now, but as we have him here, Drinker, would you like to take us out?
That's all we've got for today. Go away now.